You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it a back day. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things.
Welcome back, everyone, to the newest edition of Once a Week. I'm Billy Janlutis, and as you can see, we have another incredible guest for you today. Someone that I have truly crossed paths with before, but I have never done what we're about to do for you here and now, which is dive deep into the impact that he's creating for students across the entire country. He is a professional speaker traveling from school to school. He is a speaker from tour to tour with the mission of helping teach students about mental health and key ways to improve this in ourselves. Through his mental health workshops and his advocacy efforts, I'm telling you, he has helped and continues to help those who are struggling in silence to believe that they are enough and that someone needs them here. That could be you right now. But everyone, I give you Wes Woodson. Wes, welcome to the show, brother. I'm happy to have you, and I cannot wait to dive into things with you.
Damn, that was a great intro. Like I'm sorry, I have to start there. That was a fantastic intro. I'm sitting here, and I felt like, oh, that's me he's talking about. I felt so grateful. Thank you, Billy, for having me on your show, man. This is gonna be a great conversation.
Yeah.
I know how we met was just so interesting. I believe it was my dad actually.
Yeah.
He texted me. I saw you at the gym before, because I'm like barely 165, barely. And this big dude walks in with his big gallon of water. I'm like, yo, who this dude? So yeah, man, I'm honored that we are here talking together about something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me.
Oh, I cannot wait to dive into it with you. And as you said, your dad connected us and everything like that. But to look back then, I think even back then, we had the idea out there, hey, we should do something together. We should talk about what we do. And then to see where it's come, but to see where you've grown to since that conversation, that was probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was.
You've helped so many schools. You've traveled from school to school. You've helped so many people. But I want to dive into that because for people right now, you're literally on tour right now, right?
Yes.
988 tour. Tell people about that because the message of that is incredible.
Thank you. So 3 years ago when we met, I was about roughly a year out of being inside of a mental health behavioral hospital. 4 years ago, I was a senior in college. I was definitely the kid who was over involved and under taking care of my own self. I was not practicing self-care at all. I was very much stretched way too thin, and I got myself into a relationship, as most men in college do. You get a partner, and I found myself in a relationship that turned to be a little bit toxic and abusive. And when I got out of that abusive relationship, I remember feeling like I had just failed everybody. I failed my parents. I failed because the police got involved. It wasn't a very pretty situation at all. And I thought, even worse, I failed myself. And that's when, at the lowest point of my life, I contemplated suicide. And for me, being in that space, looking back, hindsight is always 20/20. But looking back at that space, it was not that I wanted to die. It was just I had no idea how to continue live with this pain and this shame. So anyways, what saved my life was a song by Logic, which is 1-800-273-8255. And that I called that number based on hearing that song one night. And that number is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And when I called that number, right, it was definitely petrifying because I'm like, yo, are they going to call the police? Are they going to call my mom? Are they going to call my dad? Are they going to, have people come into my room and just throw me in a hospital gurney? I didn't know what to expect. But I met this lady named Janice, and quite literally, Billy, for almost an hour, we just spoke on the phone. She just heard me, Awesome. And I learned through, meeting Janice. I never met in the flesh in person, but on the phone, people don't want to feel fixed. They want to feel heard.
Yeah.
And Janice heard me. So now, 4 years later, I want to go on tour to spread that same magic that Janice did for me. And people don't know this, but that long number that I called, 1-800-273-8255, has now been changed to 3 numbers, 988. And that is the whole intention behind the tour, to go into middle schools, high schools, and colleges to empower students to understand that someone needs you here, just like Janice did for me 4 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful. I love that. I
Thank you,
love
brother.
that. Plus your story with it. We talked a little bit before we even started recording and how what we've gone through in our lives has truly paved the way for us to be able to speak in strength to what we want to create in this world, whether it is
Exactly.
an impact to others or for you to go through that moment where you were contemplating suicide to
Yeah.
then reaching out to someone through the hotline and then them just speaking life into you. It's like, oh yeah, what do you like? Whatever it is, even talk about what you're into,
Exactly.
whatever. But it shifts your perspective to something so much more than just I can't control
Mm,
what I'm going through. I don't know what to
mm,
do. And the tough thing
mm.
is when younger people are going through this and they don't know what to do, their options could, as a parent, you could look at their options could be plentiful. As a kid going through it, your options could be one or two things. And if say one is I'm going to call my mom, well, she didn't pick up. I'm going to call my dad, well, he didn't pick up. I'm going to call my friend, well, he didn't pick up. Sadly, in the world we live in, sometimes the last option they go to could, in fact, be suicide. And
Exactly.
to hear your story and how this woman reached out a hand and said, "Hey, let's talk. Let's see what's
Exactly.
going on." It's a little bit of a light. It's light shining into your own darkness, for that
It
matter.
is.
And
It
that's what you're
is.
bringing with this tour. You're bringing light into all these schools. Not to say the schools are dark, but sometimes the mind goes dark, and we need that light to come in and inspire us to like, wait, there's more here. There's
Oh,
more here. There's more here. There's more to me, right?
exactly. Exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, that's actually was beautifully said. I might borrow those words from my website, but but no, you're right. I think what you said of how school doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily a dark place,
Mm,
right? But it's how you perceive your environment and
exactly.
how you internalize that. So
Mm,
for me, when I was a senior in college, the lights were on in my room. Literally, the room I was in, it was 4 a.m. I will never forget it. I was wearing blue jeans. I was
mhm.
wearing a t-shirt, like a similar to this t-shirt, not
Yep.
red, I think it was blue.
Yep.
And I'm pacing back and forth. It's 4 a.m. The lights are on, but it's
Mm,
dark. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And it's the fact of like it's how I'm perceiving my environment. Everyone around me, I've let down. That's what I perceived, and that
Mm,
was what I was telling myself. That was the narrative I told myself in my mind.
yep.
And when I reached out to Janice, it was
Mm,
almost like suddenly the lights actually came on, and
yeah.
that was where I was like, oh my gosh. So if I could do that for other people,
Yeah.
just one, like even on my website, I talk about empowering just one student. That's our mission. Just one
Yeah.
student. If it's one student before the presentation, one student after the presentation, that's mission accomplished,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to go in there and be on some, hey, welcome to the West show. No, it's not that at all. It's
Mm,
more so how can I use what I've been through, and
yep.
also what I'm continually going through. By the way, I'm
Yep.
not perfect. I'm not
Yep.
healed.
For sure.
I just have I have the courage to share. I
Yep.
want to empower you that you're not the only one,
Mm,
because that's what shame does, right?
yep.
Shame convinces us that it's only us, whether
Right.
it's abuse, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression. It's I must be the only one that's going through this.
Yeah.
And when you experience someone's story or testimony, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
you find and experience empathy,
Yeah.
and that is what can make shame not necessarily go away overnight, but it
Yeah.
becomes less of this big beast that kind of overwhelms
Yeah.
you and overshadows you. And that's how I
Exactly.
see what I do for students now.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredibly sad because when we're not just this is everyone, not even just kids, but when we're struggling and we think
Yeah,
we're the only one going through it, we feel
yeah,
the shame, as you said, but being able to open up to someone, that's why therapy is so incredible. That's why counseling is so incredible. That's why coaching is so incredible because
yeah,
you have someone in your pocket where it's like,
yeah,
oh, hey, they'll listen to me. But
yeah,
to have the courage to open up to whomever it is, whether it's
yeah,
the phone call, whether it's a friend, whatever it is, stranger on the street, and just let it out when you I've there's a video I have way back on YouTube. It was called The Rift, and when we are hurting, when we're pain, when you get a cut on, something happens, you get an injury, you get a cut, and as an injury, blood pours out, whatever. It's like a rift is opened up. When we open up and pour out the pain we feel, it opens up space for good to then fill that space.
yes, yes,
So many of us live just, I'm afraid of the world. I don't know. I don't want to tell anyone anything. And so then when we sit in our own head, it's called, you have meditation and then there's mentation.
yeah,
Mentation is when we sit on the same thoughts over and over and over and over and over and over again. They regurgitate. So if I'm not allowing anything new in by letting something out, I'm going to sit on the same negativity I've been thinking on for hours and days
oh,
and months and years. So when
wow,
we break free by trying something new, so I sit there and I give you so much credit for the suicide hotline thing because you've that all stemmed because you took a small action step.
Yeah.
Dot, 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 call, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the smallest action steps of faith, the
Yep.
smallest action step opens a door to, okay, now since you opened, good can come in and help you. But
Oh
until
yeah.
we open that door up, open the door up in our mind, we're going to think all this is all we perceive to be. But if our
Yes.
emotions in a lower state and we're looking down the entire day and we're looking down our entire life, you're only going to see negativity,
Only gonna see negativity.
right?
And
Exactly.
people are so quick to hyper judge that negativity,
Hmm.
and even, dare I say, want to punish themselves for having it.
Yeah.
Right? I had a friend yesterday, 2 days ago actually. We went on a hike, and he asked me. He was like, Do you wish you never experienced pain? You know,
Mm,
and my answer was no. Actually, no, I don't wish that, because we were talking about it more in the spiritual, theological
nice.
perspective. But
Perfect.
I was kind of understanding that, like, sometimes that negativity we experience is a part of the human experience, because
True.
then how can you know what light is without experiencing dark? That's what I'm trying to
Exactly.
say. So
Yeah.
for me, when I experience that dark place, that's why whenever I meet a student, by the way, like, whenever I meet a student now, and we were talking about this before,
Yep.
how sometimes a therapist might get a different reaction than a coach would.
Yeah. Right.
Because whenever I meet a student who tells me they're suicidal,
Mm,
they're shocked at my response. They're shocked at when they tell me. There's not like a
yeah.
it's not that. It's
Yeah.
it's very. I look him
Yep.
in the eye and I say, "Thank you so much for telling me, because I've been there before. I have
Yeah.
been there before, and I know what that is like. I've seen
Mhm.
that. I've seen what that student is talking about. When
Right.
a 55-year-old Nancy from social studies class,
Yep.
hears that their student is suicidal, they're gonna do all the things in the protocol as they should.
Yep. Exactly.
But going back to what I said in the beginning, people want to feel heard, not fixed.
Exactly.
But I can only hear them because
Mm,
I've been there before. I've
right.
seen it before. Whether you want to call it experiencing the devil, whatever. I've
Yep.
seen that darkness before, and I've also
Right.
seen the light, and I want to show you
Exactly.
that light.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I just wanted to round that out. The fact that, like,
Yep.
you're right. You can't experience light unless you let go of the negativity. But you can't
Exactly.
also understand the light without understanding negativity too.
Yeah. Right. Oh no, it's incredible. And like you said, to kind of round out that idea, even my own story, the pains I've been through that
Yeah.
created the man that I have become. I'm so blessed because, yes, this is who I am, but I'm so blessed because I went through all that pain and negativity back in the day. Because if I
Mhm.
didn't go through it, it wouldn't have crafted who I am. So we have to look in the great scripture, if all things work together for the good, right? If all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, but if
Yeah.
all things work together for you, and you look at that, whether you're someone listening right now is faithful, maybe you're not, but if you start to just allow a new thought in of,
Yeah.
maybe how could this even help me? And you ask that question, how could this help me? And you're in so much pain. I don't get it. But because you ask the question, a new question creates a new thought, which creates new internal dialogue in here. So if it creates new internal dialogue in there, you're now no longer like, oh, how could it help me? And you're open. And because you ask the new question, a new answer comes in, a new empowering answer can come in. But if we look at every single thought we have as a question we ask ourselves, so if we're asking ourselves all these questions, like, oh, life is so awful. I can never do this. I can never do this. Meditating, thinking on all this negativity again. Someone comes in and adds a new thought in, as you do in your workshops, as Janice did for you, as hopefully we do for someone with this message. To add a new thought in, it creates a whole new thought process in your mind to then
Mm.
rise you up the ladder of your emotions, which I teach in my workshops. We could easily
Wow.
collaborate on that,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it
Yes.
raises you up the ladder of your emotions to where I'm not depressed anymore.
Right.
I'm optimistic. I'm joyful. I'm loving. I'm empowered. You're now experiencing something new because you asked a new question. You thought a new thought. So you feel a new emotion. You feel a new emotion. You're no longer sitting in depression or anxiety or even suicidal ideation aspects. You're now somewhere new. And that's scary for people because they've only been in one area. They don't know new. So
Oh yeah.
new could, like, oh, I don't know what love is. So I rush back to what I know. But little action steps of faith. If you step into it, like, this doesn't hurt. This isn't bad. I'm going to keep going. And you keep
Yeah.
going, like, wait, my entire life becomes different. I don't have those thoughts anymore because I'm seeing new because I took a small action step. That's the beauty of what you did by calling that phone number. Small action step led to something massive.
And and it's interesting because when you say it like that, and it's beautiful to say it. It's beautiful to hear it, because I, in the moment, it was an act of desperation. You know, it was
Yeah.
an act of
Yeah.
like, you know, I have kind of like the angel on one shoulder and the dark entity on the other one.
Yep.
And it was like I had both of those things in my mind. I had reach out for help, but then I also had the plan in my head of hurting myself.
Mm.
So where do I like how do I that duality is so hard to
True.
exist within. But I love how you're saying like you're welcoming something new. And I
Mm.
also want to come back to what you said about when you sometimes when you experience something new and you haven't experienced that before, the novelty of that new experience can kind of make it flash back or jump
Yeah.
back to what was
Right.
comfortable. I had a pastor that said this quote: what was helpful for you to survive in one season will not help you thrive in the other."
It's true.
And I think about that often. So when you said that, that's also a very full circle. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me learn and accept a different way of seeing calling and reaching out for help. Because
Yeah.
that one micro step created this huge, huge growth period over the
Yeah.
last 4 years. It's quite literally night and day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned full circle. This comes full circle now because the post I had on Instagram and Facebook yesterday was a quote that I said in my most recent YouTube video. The smallest step could open the greatest door. The smallest
Yeah.
step could open the biggest door. So if you
Yeah.
say right there, it was a small step, it was a minuscule step in your story, that was probably the biggest step in your story. Because if you didn't take it,
Yeah.
where would life be? You know,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah. And
didn't take it, how many students would you have helped?
yeah.
Right?
That's
Smallest step opened the biggest door for you.
the largest door that will it's keep on opening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it, and I read I talk about that in my book. The fact that reaching out for help really has changed my life. Right? It has
Mm,
changed my life, and that's also what I want to normalize on the tour. Is like
yeah.
normalizing the act of reaching out for help. It could be as calling 988 itself,
Yep.
texting the crisis hotline or the text
Yep.
line 741 or going to a guidance counselor's office,
Mm,
or asking your mom or sitting your mom down or your dad down and be like, hey, I'm not good. You know, I need help. Or even texting a friend, be like, yo, can we just kind of breathe with you for a second? You know what I mean? Like reaching out for help should be more normalized and less of a shameful experience in this
exactly.
country than it actually is
Yeah.
currently.
Right.
That's the bigger intention behind my entire advocacy work. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell us about your book. I could run off on a tangent of that, but I want to
Oh,
keep
bro,
it going.
we need to come back for part 2 to go deeper
Oh,
into what we just talked about.
we'll get 10 parts involved in the conversation. But tell us about your book because you mentioned that, and like we haven't even talked about that in the intro. But tell them like what's your book? You just mentioned a little bit to how that came about, but where can people find that?
Oh yeah. So whenever I'm on podcasts and whether I'm like, you know, if it's videotape, whatever. So I think it's
Yep.
videotape. But I like to actually have it around me. So
Yeah.
it's called right here. It's called I Have Anxiety. So
Okay.
what? And the process for the whole book, well, like I said in the beginning of this interview, I was in a mental health like rehabilitation behavioral program. So in short, it's a day program. So you go to
Mhm.
this facility for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you're learning all these different things. You're learning about positive coping skills. You're learning what you're actually talking about of rewiring your kind of
Mhm.
you're rewiring the narratives you're telling yourself in your brain, and you're carving a
Yep.
new path to form new beliefs. And
Yeah.
you're moving from a victim's mindset or mentality to the mentality of a survivor. And it's very empowering, and you're doing all these things. But if you are not willing to accept these things as new, you're just gonna be stuck in that same loop. So there I was 4 years ago, receiving all of this knowledge. I'm like, yo, like this is great. Like I'm learning positive coping skills. I'm breaking down how to find a therapist. I'm learning like, whoa, like there's a connection between the food I eat and the mood the experience and the mood I experience and the emotions I have. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, why isn't this more talked about? And even more, Billy, why do I, at the age of 22, being
Mm.
suicidal, getting my heart broken, being
Yep.
abused, why do I have to now learn this? Why wasn't
Mhm.
I taught this when I was 12? You know what I mean?
Yep.
When I was bullied back when I was 12. Why didn't I learn this when I was 9 or 8? Where was this information back then?
Right.
So, having been to business school myself, I went to do what they taught us in school, which was like look at the market. You know, so I looked at the market
Mm.
and I found that the books out there about anxiety, depression, or around Gen Z was written by older people that were twice my age who had
Right.
a whole alphabet in front of their name and behind their name, and they were
Mm.
white. So I
Yep.
was like, you know what? I want to write a book for that 12-year-old version of myself, or that 16-year-old version of myself, or even that 21-year-old version of myself. And I want to make it conversational. I want to make it practical. It's a mixture of my story. So I'm sharing my story to kind of destigmatize the idea of getting help. And
Yeah.
I want to give some like practical research that is breaking down, how to have practice a good sleep hygiene, how to have good people around you. I know we always say you're the circumstance of the 5 people you're hanging around with, but at the same time, how do we actually build a support network around us? What is the fundamentals? How do we know a safe person from an unsafe person? How do we know a good therapist from a bad therapist? What are the things to look for? What are positive coping skills? So actually in the back of the book, there's actually a list of, I believe it's like 99 coping skills you can use
Awesome.
today. So it's very much of a practical guide, and it's called "I Have Anxiety, So What."
Yeah.
It's breaking down my story, understanding why kids today are very anxious and depressed, and what parents can do to better intervene, as well as it offers 5 steps to better coexist with your anxiety. Because I couldn't argue enough how many times I saw it, both in the hospital and in life, that people want to just get rid of it. They want to be like, oh, like, how can I heal myself? How can I fix myself? Again, people don't want to feel fixed. They want to feel heard.
Yeah.
So how can I teach people how to coexist with their anxiety? And
Yeah.
that's what the book breaks down.
Awesome.
I Have Anxiety, So What? Available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere where you get books. On my website, weswoodson.com. I'll send you an autographed copy of it. But I want to get the book into more hands for students. And that came out in 2021, so 3 years ago.
Okay.
And
I love that.
one heck of a ride.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. And people, go check that. All those links that you just mentioned are going to be in the description of this video. They're going to be in the credits of this video. But Wes, I love that because it's funny. You mentioned you're helping people understand their anxiety. You're helping students understand anxiety. There's something I mentioned probably on the YouTube channel more than anything else, but when I go in and speak to companies or corporations or adults, we'll say more so than students, I sit there and all these adults hear all these different ideas to help learn how the mind works. So my goal of my work is to teach people how to use the mind the way we were meant to. Okay, it's a tool. And if we aren't taught how to use the tool, it goes all over the place. That's where you experience anxiety, depression, everything that you're touching on, right?
Right.
And so when we don't know how to use it, all these adults are like, oh my goodness, I wish they taught us this when we were younger. I go, yeah, I do too. Because if we teach the next generation how to use their mind, where they can overcome all this and understand this much quicker, that means the future of our world gets that much better. But we don't teach. We didn't learn that in school. Like, truthfully, therapy wasn't even a terminology until I probably got to high school, and then onward, it's like, oh yeah, that's an option, but it's not like it's emphasized as much as it is today. So it's growing, but everything you're teaching in your book, it's needed. It's needed now more than ever. Not even just for students, for everyone. Like, I sit there and I try and reframe, as you mentioned, where, in the program you were in, it helped you rewire the narrative, rewire the belief system. So I started to sit there and like, all right, anxiety. If I could look at anxiety, we get anxiety when something's about to happen, or we think something's about to happen, and we feel that emotion in us. We feel that tension. We don't know what it is. We feel the energy in us. Well, all right. Well, what if I redefine anxiety rather than a negative term? What if I start calling it joyful anticipation?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So joyful anticipation. So all my clients that come through, no matter what age, I'm like, oh, I'm just really anxious about this. I'm like, is it that, or do you feel something's about to happen? And why is that a bad thing? What if something good's about to happen? It becomes joyful. Like, oh, whatever's about to happen is going to help me, because if all things do work together, which they do, then this is going to help me get to where I'm supposed to get to. It's going to help me grow into who I'm meant to be. So I have joyful anticipation instead of anxiety, because something great's about to happen. Exactly. At that point, I have a smile on my face. I'm not, I don't know, I'm afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm happy. I'm going forward where I want to go. Right?
No, I love that reframe, because the power of reframing, as you already help with your clients, it's so powerful. It's so powerful, because what I did similar to you when you reframed anxiety, I was in an outpatient program. That's what it's called, an outpatient program.
Right.
And I was in a room full of like 12, 15 people in a semicircle. Some of them were younger than me, some were older than me. One lady was like a 65-year-old grandma who was in there. It was wild. But everyone in that room was in there for their own reason, right? And I'm not going to lie, half the room did not want to be there. Like, it was just like, we're forced to be about either our parents, as part of our parole, and some were getting out of juvie at the time. So it was like, they did not want to be there. And that energy was contagious. 'Cause I was like, damn, I don't want to be here either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to be back at school. I mean, I didn't want to be back at school. I wanted to kind of not be in that room.
Yeah.
But it was like, how can I reframe this environment? So
Mhm.
even in the book, I talk about, I reframed that program as, I called it anxiety school. And it's like this exclusive institution that you are hand selected to be a part of to learn how to understand your mental health. And I got in, you know what I mean? I got in,
Yeah.
and it was cool. But even on the flip side too, what you were saying about how do I say this? You're mentioning how you reframed it to joyful anticipation and how all things work together for the greater good.
Yep.
I love that, because how I saw my anxiety too is, anytime I get anxious as a person who's spiritual, I think to myself of, am I trying to play God in this part of my life?
I get that.
And if I am, how can I submit? How can I kind of be like, whoa?
Right.
Because anxiety, when you get more anxious, you want to be more in control.
It's true.
Right? You want to be more in control. And for me, whether it was a test back in 3rd grade, or whether it was before a basketball game as an athlete, I was trying to control my future. It's the future anticipation of like trying to figure out what's going to happen. And it's a natural occurrence. Like our brains, right? We're hardwired to avoid pain. So your brain is almost working overtime to help you avoid pain. That's what anxiety really is. It's your brain kind of anticipating. Like, so you're trying to be on the lookout all the time. Where it becomes a disorder, right, or a disease, is the fact where it's starting to disrupt your daily life. Now it's disrupting how you're sleeping, how you're interacting with other people, how you're even putting food in your body, because now your body is now such in a state of just fight or alarm or alertness that you can't even go through the human experience in a very normal fashion. You are now always on. You're not eating, not sleeping, you're not socializing. What are we doing? Now we're shrinking. So I try to help students understand that, and the fact that, like you do with your clients, that it's not this evil thing that we are so petrified of. It's something that our brains do, and it can become a disorder, but it's not something we have to hyper judge, because it's only going to create more of a spiral.
Exactly. That's the beauty of the work I did working with younger students, teenagers, everything like that. And so it's whenever someone came in, or a kid came in, they had terrible anxiety. And, for that age, social anxiety, as much as it was, and it's even worse now than ever for teenagers, but this was probably like 7-8 years ago. But whenever a client came in, they had social anxiety, I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're at Dunkin's, grocery store, convenience store, whatever it is. I will give you the money to buy what you want, but you have to go through the cashier process. And that was the end of the world for so many kids, where it's like, no, I can't do that. And like watching them do it, it's like, it's like silent, head down. You just like no words whatsoever. And like, all right, so then we get, as a mentor at the time, all right, we adjust that what it is. So I began to learn that a lot of these students that came in, anytime they had to talk to someone else, what's the worst case that happened? Well, the world ends. Like, so the world's going to end because you buy yourself a bagel from Dunkin's? Like, that's okay. All right. No, hey, that's your belief. Hey, no worries. We're going to figure this out. So then we go in like, hey, here's the money. Just go through the process, blah, blah, blah. So we go outside. I'm like, hey, I'm alive. Are you alive? Is the world still going? The world didn't end. You did it. So that belief's gone, but you have fun with it, where a student's able to understand, wait, why did I think that? Why did I always tell myself that was going to happen when everything turned out okay? And then you realize everything always does turn out okay. And if it's not okay, it's not done. So if it's not done yet, if it's not done yet, you keep going. But that's the beauty of helping everyone, not just, we're talking about students right now, which for parents listening, these are the thoughts that run through your kids' minds, because they're learning the world. As you get older, you learn the world, but you never stop learning. You just have more knowledge, you have more understanding, you have more experience. But for a teenager that is literally learning themselves, because you're growing at that age, but you're learning about the world and how you operate in it, these are the thoughts. So if a parent's listening, have that conversation with your kid. If you find they have some aspect of social anxiety, you never have fun in a fun conversation. Not, hey, you should do it this way. No, bring them into the experience, as a parent should do. Have fun with it and teach them and show them, hey, it's okay. Everything's going to work out fine. And it always does.
Billy, what you were in your example that you just broke down about bringing the student to Dunkin' Donuts, and they're telling you, oh, I can't pay for my own food because If I do that, all this stuff's going to happen. And they think the world's going to end.
Mhm.
You did something so powerful that I think parents need to understand more of. And it's beyond just validating and just acknowledging their feelings. It's 3 words. And you didn't really say the 3 words, but you said it with your actions. And the 3 words are, I believe you, right? How many times do you tell or you find a student will go to their parents and they'll try to be vulnerable and be like, oh my gosh, I had the worst day at school today because, these kids picked on me. And how many times do parents want to necessarily, they want to fix the problem. They want to really hear the problem. They want to be like, oh, if you should try this, or I'll call the school for you, da da da, and I'll get them punished, whatever it is. They want to jump in, and I get the instinct, right? That's the parental,
For sure.
response of wanting to not have your child experience pain. I
Exactly.
literally had a conversation with my mom last night about this very thing. That's why I'm very passionate about it. Because I love how it's coming up now. So when you can not only validate, but tell the student or tell the child, hey, I believe that's how you're seeing the world right now. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's true. But it's how they're perceiving it. So you're acknowledging and then validating, hey, that's how you are seeing the world right now. Let's play it out.
Yep.
Let's play it out. And from that experience, just like that student, they walk out that dunk and they're like, oh, they connect. But if you were to hop in and be like, no, you're wrong. Like, no, it's going to be fine. Right. They're just going to, what's going to do? It's going to build up that internalized shame because they're like, wait, no, it's not fine because my body still feels like this. So something's wrong with me. And they're just going to go inward more and then they're going to become more silent. And then now, fast forward 5 months, 5 years from that moment, now that internalized shame has turned from, no, it's not something's wrong with me. Now it's something's wrong with me and no one else understands me. Yeah. So you know what? I can't be in this world anymore.
Yeah, right.
That's where it gets very dangerous. So if we can help parents understand, hey, can we try to not necessarily fix, but believe our kids back at home of how they perceive the world and try to help them make those own connections? Because you didn't tell that student. You didn't be like, hey, look, you're fine.
Yep.
They had that realization themselves.
Exactly.
They were like, oh, wait a minute. I just paid $5 for this croissant and this iced coffee.
Right.
And the world ain't on fire. I'm good, Right. And it's just having them make that own decision. And that's my other point too. We don't give kids enough agency. Yeah. We wanna hyper do the things for them, but we don't give enough credit to children and their brains to form these connections. Now, I'm not saying like we should give students and kids like all the decision-making power of their own lives. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how smart and how capable your child is as opposed to being overly coddled. Now, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But I really do believe if we can get back to not just validating our students, but telling them, I believe you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, man. The world might be so different. So different.
I love it. And like, I've a couple other questions I want to dive into in this podcast with you, but to kind of put a period on that topic and guide us into our next one, when I get to speak to whatever audience, corporations, students, whatever the background is, I guide people through the same process, which touches on everything that you just said. And it's going to lead us into our next question. But so when I spoke to Michigan State a couple months ago, all these students in the room, blah, blah, I asked them, guide them to the car. I teach them about how powerful your thoughts are. Go through this whole thing about how powerful your thoughts are. But I asked them, all right, write down the 3 thoughts that run through your mind on a daily basis. Just want to give them time, whatever they do. And they all write them down. Like, okay. And then like now, look at those thoughts and ask yourself, do they serve you? And if they don't serve you, if you want it to be something different, if you want to speak about yourself differently, write it down. You're doing the work. You're choosing in that moment what you actually want to think about. So we target the thought process. Then we go into your words and what your internal dialogue is. Like, what do you say to yourself on a daily basis? And if all of those don't serve you and they tear you down, write 3 new ones that build you up. So now we're talking in your words. The last one, to touch on everything you said, is I said basically going into your actions and how powerful they are, but your actions are built off of the belief systems you have. So 100%. If your belief systems do not serve you anymore, write down what are the 3 beliefs you have about yourself, about your world, whatever it is that you stand on. There's your foundation you stand on. Write them down. Do they serve you? Do you really connect with these? Or do you need to cross them out and write new beliefs in this one moment that will decide the rest of your life or the rest of this moment? And so from that point, they're in an empowered state because they went through their thoughts, they went through their words, they're seeing how confident they can be. So they write down a new belief system where, I don't know, I can accomplish anything I set my mind to, whatever it is, rather than, oh, I'm never good enough. I always fail in school. Like, I don't know. Like, it was, so the student, I'm not putting them on the spot. Like, hey, what did you write? It's the student go into their own mind, question themselves, question their beliefs that they stand on that have built them to where they are, and have a mature conversation with themselves and say, like, you know what? That doesn't work for me anymore. I get why it's there because I went through X, Y, and Z, but no, I don't want it anymore. So I write down something new, and then we kind of glue it all together where it's like, hey, from now on, you walk in this empowerment, you walk in this confidence, you walk in this self-love, you walk in this healing. And from that point, they leave that classroom like, oh my goodness, like they're transformed. And that's the goal of that's the goal of me as a speaker and what I do. But I believe that's the goal of any speaker, to help them, inspire them. But what you're doing is you're transforming someone into who they're meant to be in their own right. Not telling them you're supposed to be this way, or as a parent, as we just said, a parent, hey, you're supposed to think this way or whatever it is. No, you're hearing them out, understanding it, and then adding a little bit more. All right, I get that, but let's add a little bit more. And then they make their own decision. As you said, like, as you just said, like, it's not them making their own decisions for everything in life. No, they're kids, they're students, they're teenagers. They still need guidance. Right. But to allow them to understand how this works and then choose how this works and focus on this area. That means all that negativity can get thrown out the window if they choose it to. And sometimes, people are longer, whatever it is. But that's the process I take with my workshops to touch on everything we just did. But I want to put it on you now, Wes, because one of the questions I told you I wanted to ask you, and make sure people understand this, what is it like for a student? What is it like for schools to have you come in? What do these workshops look like for you? What do you bring to the table? Because you've gone over all these great experiences. You've gone over your book. You've gone over all this empowerment that you bring to these students to teach them. But what does it look like? Tell us that right now.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing all of that, because as you're talking, that's why I love meeting other speakers in the space, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about so many like pieces of content, resources that I could use and get your insights on for a lot of the other things that we're doing. But yeah, so thank you for sharing that, because it's always inspiration to be in the presence of other people who are inspiring other people. So thank you for just pouring into me. So I want to say
that, you, man. Right back at you.
I feel a part of the audience listening to this conversation right now. But to answer your question, what it looks like for me is, and it's interesting how, again, always comes full circle. But when I was in 6th grade, right, this is a core memory of mine, and I will never be sketched from my memory because it changed my life. We had a father come in, and he told the story of his son. Someone's name was Ryan. And Ryan, he was bullied in school. And the parent didn't really understand the signs, because I think it was like 2 years after he started middle school, he died by suicide. And I remember in 6th grade, it felt like the father, who was, again, he was probably in his 50s at the time, or probably mid 40s, and he's telling my story. And he was sharing his story about his son, but he was telling my story, and it compelled me to go up to this 45-year-old white man and hug him, because he was telling my story, and I felt so seen beyond my capacity to understand, because it felt like in a room of 200 people, he was talking to me. So I was like, now that I'm in middle schools and high schools, colleges, even corporations, just like yourself, I don't come in with this knowledge or with this presence, if you will, because I've seen this before. I've seen people come into a school, and they come in, they're wearing a suit, a tie, a briefcase, and they look like one of the teachers. And instantly half the room checks out.
Turns off.
I come in with a backpack, Air Jordans, some camo jeans, a graphic tee. I look like a student. I can't tell you how many times the teachers have thought I was a student. And I go on stage, and I literally share my story. I have humor in there. I also bring in the knowledge from my own experience from going to cognitive behavioral therapy, understanding how to rewire and rewrite core beliefs, looking for evidence. I intertwine that. I call it the Trojan horse approach. It's almost like I'm coming in here, and there's pictures behind me of my life. I show you like embarrassing pictures of my childhood, from my being 10 months old with a receding hairline. I show my mom, my dad. I show my little dog Bentley that I had. I show my beautiful fiance now, and I show all these things because students don't want to hear it. They want to see it. They want to see. They want to see the
Right.
fact that wait. I show them this picture. There's this picture. I'm gonna send it to you after this chat. There's a picture that was taken when I was in college, and I end my presentation this way. I use the analogy to describe my mental health as it's like a swan. Now, on the outside, you think about a swan, it looks so perfect. Like it's so well put together. It has this kind of effortless glide like this. But if you were to go underwater, that thing's like this. You know, it's pedaling. It's like this optical illusion. So I end my whole presentation by showing a picture of myself. It was taken 2 days after calling the hotline.
Wow.
And I'm smiling on this photo. It's a group photo, and you wouldn't even know. You know, you wouldn't even know. And the purpose of showing that picture to students is the fact it could be your friend right next to you who is feeling this way. We don't know what everyone's fighting. Everyone's fighting a battle we can't see. Doesn't make it less real. And I end my slide this way as an opening to what's going to happen next, which is a question and answering period. And what that is you'll find that, like, all right, kids are anxious. They're like, oh my gosh, do I say something? One kid raises his hand. They're like, hey, what's your favorite color? I'm like, oh, it's red, you know? But then the next question and the question after that, and then now we're 25 minutes into this. Students will be like, yo, what do I do if my best friend is suicidal? What do I do? What do I say? Hey, Wes, what do I do if I'm suicidal? Who do I go to?
Right.
Or Wes, what do I do if my home, like where I have to go to at 3:00 after the bell rings, what do I go if home's not safe? What do I do if my abuser is in the next room next to me?
Right.
And these are not just high school kids. These are 7th graders. 7th graders. That's why I'm so passionate about, like, when students or when teachers or adults say, oh, we're not in a mental health crisis. I'm like, no, bump all that. We have little kids who are in middle school, even elementary school, who are experiencing these thoughts at a faster pace because of the world we're in now. So it's just like, I disagree with that fundamentally, but that's what a typical experience looks like. Now, other experiences that I offer, I do have a workshop where I work more closely. I just did a workshop with a pair of student orientation leaders.
Cool.
And it was trying to understand, we were trying to create space, because that's my intention. I'm just creating space. I create space for student leaders to understand their identity and to understand the core belief, to rewire it, that your work is not your worth. And trying to unwire that, because sometimes as a student leader, definitely myself, I'm not sure if you can relate to this. When I was a student leader, my entire identity was based on that.
Gotcha.
So it was like, if I'm a student leader, I can't be vulnerable, because if I'm vulnerable, the core belief is vulnerability equals weakness.
Right.
I can't put my mental health first or practice self-care, because I believe the story I'm telling myself is self-care is selfish. No, it's not. Or self-love is selfish. No, it's not. So I'm trying to walk the students through the process of breaking that down. And that's the whole purpose of what I do. That's the whole purpose of the workshops. That's the whole purpose of what I call the keynote presentations. It's really to A, create space, and B, help students feel more seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Hope I didn't miss anything. You froze a little bit. I missed.
I know. I saw it and I was mad, but I basically was saying, I think it froze the part where I was talking about disconnecting the belief that self-love and self-care is selfish. It's
okay.
not.
And
empowering the student leaders to understand that both can coexist.
Now, it'll be on the final video, just for the recording froze on my end. It's all good though. Got in there. But I think that's incredible, Wes, because you bring so much to the table for, like you said, it could be a company, it could be a school, it could be whatever, but to see where this starts, for students to understand it, to understand their mental health, to understand themselves. You're creating space, which, as we said, like when I talk to people, it's like, I wish we taught this in schools. Because there isn't a space to teach it right now.
No.
So for when a speaker comes in, you create space just for a kid, for an adult to think about themselves for a second. That's like when I go speak to companies, I explain to whoever the decision maker is, like, hey, it's personal development meets professional development, because you can't become a professional until you work on the personal. You can't be your best professional until you work on the personal. Same thing with students. Students can grow,
Yeah.
But what is growing until you work on what is actually underneath? And
Exactly.
what you're doing is creating space for the student to look at what's underneath. And to
Exactly.
echo your point, everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about. Everyone is going through something you know nothing about. So
Exactly.
for someone listening right now, whether it's Wes, whether it's myself, whether it's us together, whatever it is, do your students need this? Does your company need this?
Mm,
And to think on that, create space for yourself right now and think on that. Well, maybe that is a struggle in the school system because, as Wes touched on, the kids aren't probably not going to tell it to you.
no.
The kids probably are coming into school, and as you did at Wes, as I've done it myself, you're looking to push yourself to get those grades and everything like that, because if you don't get those grades, you don't want to feel bad and feel shame by bringing home a bad grade to your parents. You don't
Yeah.
want to not make the team because you're going to feel bad. There's so much stress putting these kids, I think, through the upbringing of the generations, for that matter,
Yeah.
it has been grown that way, which is fine. But
Yeah.
now that we're seeing things change, we're seeing the world change. Mental health is becoming a much more hot button topic. And if we can tackle that at an early age, that means that person, that kid, has one, all the tools necessary if they should step into that area. But
Yeah.
two, they now look at themselves differently as they grow, because now they have self-esteem, capital S, self-esteem. They
Yeah.
can grow confidently in who they are because they now believe in who they are, because they realize they had enough space to look at their beliefs, to look at themselves and be like, wait a second, I'm struggling. I can go talk to X, Y, and Z. I can call the number. I can do this. Or wait a second, I can change my beliefs depending on whatever space is opened up. But kids need the space to do so, to hear your story, to look at you on screen as all your pictures and realize, like, hey, he's a guy like me.
Yeah.
He was in school like me.
Yeah.
There's no difference between the student and us talking because we've been through the process. But now that we've been through the process, we're reaching a hand back down. Hey, come up here. It looks better up here, but I want to show you how to get up the ladder so you can walk this path yourself.
It's actually I would push back on the last part what you said
Okay.
about the ladder, only because I actually when I have the slide at the end,
Yep.
it gets better slide,
Cool.
and I intentionally use this, and this is funny because ironic. It says it gets better,
Yep.
but I also say it's also continually getting better because I'm not necessarily healed, right?
Mm,
I
yep.
I have never wanted to portray, because I remember I would get this question. I would get this
Yep.
question a lot. It was like, "Do you really have anxiety?" There's no way
Yeah.
you do because you're out here talking like this. And I was like, "Ooh, okay. I think they must perceive what I'm
Mm,
doing
right.
as, oh, he's just maybe he's already fixed and I'm not there yet." But I
Mm,
was so I made it a mission of mine, an
yeah.
intention, if you will. After every presentation, I'm like, "Yo, I'm wearing black shirts right now because I'm sweating profusely right now." And I'm anxious right now. Before
Yeah.
before I came up in here, your guidance counselor offered me some food, but I can't because if I did, I'd be
Yeah.
in the bathroom pooping. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm telling y'all that, yo, it's not necessarily a ladder of I have the answers.
Yep.
It's more so I'm in here showing you that
Yeah.
these are my scars, but I'm
Yep.
still here. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, these are my scars, and if I'm showing you who I am,
Mm,
you can show who you are to maybe not your mom just
yeah.
yet, but that counselor that's 5 rows in front of you, maybe you can go into her office. You know what
Mm,
I mean? And
right.
that's where I always love the fact, and that's the secret, that's the magic, if you will, of me
Yep.
showing you my scars in front of you and
Yep.
being like, yo, this is me. This is
Yep.
still a part of who I am.
Yeah.
Emphasis, I said part of, not all of me. This is a part
Yeah.
of who I am, not all of me, but this is a part of who I am, and I'm
Hmm.
still here. I
Yeah.
think sometimes the real belief that we have as people is we can't be anxious and
Hmm.
be depressed. We can't have suicidal thoughts and still function. Like,
Mm,
it's like a binary approach. It's like, if you're anxious, that means you're struggling, and you should be like in bed all the time. But that's not true,
mm,
because that's a part. That's what anxiety could look like for someone else.
yeah.
But there's also people who are, if you want to call them high functioning or whatever, who could be
Yep.
on stage, who could be working a 9 to 5 job, who could be an executive, and they could have all of the accolades and the accomplishments in the world, but inside feel like nothing, you
Mm,
know? And that's why I want to say it's not like a ladder, but it's more so like I'm sitting here right next to you. You know what
mm,
I mean?
right.
Let's, and I used to do that too. And I started doing this recently. During Q&A, I'll get a chair and I'll sit
Yep.
down. Because the whole time, for 45 minutes, I've been standing, they've been sitting. So they already see me as this. So I take a chair. I'm like, yo, teacher, let me get a chair. I got old knees. I'm gonna sit down. And I sit down. Now that triggers in their mind. Oh, he's one of us. Maybe I can stop going like this, and I can loosen up a little bit. So that's how I see it. I see it as I don't necessarily have all the answers, but I'm showing you my scars, and I'm here to inspire you that you have scars too, but that should not prevent you from connecting with other people.
Exactly. It's so empowering. And I think one of the best things as a speaker is that Q&A part. And I love that section of all my gigs. And, and like, it's funny where you described it as, one kid raises, the first one has the confidence to raise his hand or her hand, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. When I was speaking at Michigan State, they had to pull me off the stage because they had another speaker coming in, and there were so many questions because every kid was sparked, and they couldn't stop raising their hands.
Yes,
and that was the greatest feeling because it showed that they took something from it. They wanted more, but they took something from it that they can then run with. And that's the beauty of being a speaker. Yes, ask your question. If we get to you, you get an answer there, but you have the questions. You can be inspired to answer it in whatever way it looks like.
And that's why as another speaker, so like speaker, and this, I'll say it live right now, I don't really care. But like, if you could set up on your website an opportunity or a way that a student can anonymously send you a letter, that it would be powerful. For me, on my website, there is a Dear Wes button. So if a student after a presentation wants to write me anonymously, they can press that button and they will write an email to me. And the letters I've gotten from that, because I've had it happen too, where I'm pulled off stage because these kids gotta go to lunch. I mean, we can't keep them in here for 4 hours, even though they want to, but they gotta eat based on the law. So I have that as a tool in case there's more interaction they want. And I'm not gonna lie. I've had times where I've spoken in Nebraska and I've flown back to Boston when I was living at the time. And I had a kid press the Dear Wes button and he writes a letter and he expressed in that letter he's suicidal. Now it's anonymous, on their end, but I do see who it is, and sometimes they sign their name. And I can tell, what they're saying in the content of the letter. But then I can say, oh, what school are you from? And they'll tell me what school they're from. I will call that school and get that student some help.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So it's almost like being a bridge for help. And that's awesome. One of my biggest passions. If I can be a bridge to help, if it's a book, if it's the other resources, if it's a show or an engagement, that's the bridge. That's the bridge.
Oh, it's I love that. Just even that button for them to do that, and like how you can then reach out to the school, and just how, that just helps a kid. That helps a life right there. I love it. As we start to close this podcast out, I want to ask you one last question before we kind of get into the like, where do people find you and everything. But right now, you've done the speaking, you're helping people and everything, but you're creating something outside of speaking that it kind of merges all these pieces together. So tell us about that. I know we talked a little bit about that prior to recording, and it's really your passion right now. Tell us about that so people can go even learn more about you, learn more about what you're creating. And that's all I'm going to say with it. I'm going to leave it open to you. I'm going to let you run with it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to answer this question, because it is something I'm very passionate about. When I've gone into schools, primarily high schools and middle schools, what I found is that that's probably some of the students in the room. Let's say it's in an auditorium of like 400 kids. There's probably 10 people in that room who have never seen someone who looks like them, either as a person of color or a man, talking about anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, or toxic abusive relationships. There's so many layers to that. And what the idea or the theory of representation can do to a student, it could change the course of their life. I truly believe that. And not only that, after I would leave a school and receive these letters, or whether it's a student DMing me, it kind of created this thought process in my heart and my mind that there's obviously way more things I could do to better impact the student. So with those two things in mind, I thought back to my own personal experience, right? In this interview, we talked about when I was in 6th grade and I saw that dad come in and he shared his story. That was great. But I only was in his presence for like an hour. Where are students majority of their days? They're at school. They're at school. And then go back full circle more. when I'm in the hospital, I'm questioning, why wasn't I taught this when I was a kid?
Mm.
So I want to go back in time.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can we intervene proactively younger so that when they get older, they have the tools, they have the mindset, they have the beliefs that when they do encounter a challenge or an obstacle, which they will, that cannot be erased from the human experience. If it can, let me know. But it can't. It can't. So we're going to encounter challenges. How can we better respond to our challenges? How can we better equip our younger kids with the positive coping skills to better navigate their emotions without shame?
Mm.
So how that is coming to life now, I'm building a mental health education company called Happy Hero Education.
Mm.
And the premise of it is to help those students who are neurodivergent or who have learning challenges or processing challenges better navigate their emotions without shame.
Mm.
And how we're doing that is using the power of storytelling and animation. And we're taking basically the magic of Disney and Pokemon,
Nice.
and we're marrying it to cognitive behavioral therapy
Okay.
and the idea of learning positive coping skills. So we have characters within our universe like there's Gratitude Gator, there's Kindness Kitten, there's Lazy Lizard, there's even monsters too, because sometimes our more so negative or big feelings can be like that casting over shadow.
Right.
So we have Perfect Panda, we have Worry Worm, we have all these different characters, and what that's going to be used to do is to help parents, caregivers, teachers better engage with their students. So we have, for instance, we have a trading card game where kids can collect all their favorite coping skills. They can externalize not just how they can better cope with their anxiety or mental health challenges, but they can also externalize. Let me see if I have a monster here. We have imposter syndrome iguana. You know what I mean? So there's all these different ways that when a student is feeling a certain way, instead of internalizing it, how can we externalize it to understand it and learn better tools? So there's the trading cards coming out. We have a book series called the Big Feeling Adventures series. It's going to feature both an animated character and a human character, helping the character navigate these big feelings like imposter syndrome, anxiety, bullying, having trouble falling asleep at night because of anxious thoughts or racing thoughts or doom scrolling. We're trying to create tools for educators to intervene proactively way before I got to come to speak at the school when they're 16, 14, or 15. You know what I mean? So it's like really trying to go from the bottom up. I already have spoken to executive dads, moms. I've spoken to the 21-year-old junior or sophomore in college. I've already spoken to the 16, 17-year-old Timmy or Sally in high school. I've spoken to the 12-year-old Johnny in middle school. But what about Timmy and Johnny in elementary school? Right? What about that? And that's what Happy Hero Education is attacking. So if you know a special educator, if you know a parent, if you know a play therapist or a therapist who is looking for more engaging resources, definitely check out happyhero.co. That way we have so much stuff coming out. I'm very excited. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so incredible. I didn't, for people listening, I didn't know any of that. I only knew a tidbit to what he told me prior to us recording. But to hear all of that, Wes, oh my goodness. That is creating such an incredible avenue for, as you said, everyone. Students, yes, but parents to be able to impact, for special educators, for schools, for counselors, for whoever it is on the sun. Oh my goodness, you found a need and you brought the need. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also I want to add too, like the characters, not just the animated characters, but the human form characters, they're going to be people of color. They're going to have diverse representation, not just black, white, but not just Asian, not just Latino, but also people who are disabled, right? People who identify with being gay. And it's like understanding how can we bring those things, because one thing I learned too, you brought this up at the beginning of our conversation, of one of your clients who you worked with in the past is transgender. And I did not know this, but 50% of transgender adolescents or youth, 50%, not even just not 1 in 4, not 1 in 5, 1 in 2. 1 out of 2 transgender individuals attempt suicide, not even contemplate, attempt. So it's like that statistic alone is waking me up like, yo, where is the representation in media, right? In books, podcasts, animation shows, movies, where is that representation of the mental health conversation for these individuals? They're not represented. So I want to create that in Happy Heroes, like not just the characters like this, but how can I show, 6-year-old Wesley, myself,
Yep.
that hey, we see you. That's what the intention is. Trying to add diversity to the mental health conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That's incredible. I cannot wait to see where that grows to, dude, because it's like I said, that you found the need and you filled the need. Like, that's incredible. And so
Thank
people
you.
listening right now, go check that out. Like I said, that's going to be in the links of the description. That's going to be in the credits, because you got the resource now for everyone listening and watching this. You got the resource.
Yeah.
Wes, I love that. I love everything you've brought to the table. 2 quick last questions before we close this whole thing out, and people can go find everything, go look at all your websites. 1, where can they find you? And 2, what is a lasting message you want to leave with everyone before we close everything off?
Ooh, love that. So let's start with the first one. First one, you can find me at Wes Woodson on everything, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads. Threads. I'm on Threads. Definitely follow me there. If you want to support my work and just understand more about my story, visit weswoodson.com. That's just spelled W-E-S, no T, it's not a direction, WESWOODSON.com. I'd love to connect you. Send me an email. It's just wes@weswoodson.com, but it's pretty much Wes Woodson everything. I'm grateful for that. If you want the book, I Have Anxiety, So What? It's on both my website, like I just mentioned, and on Amazon, sent to your house, both on Audible. It's my voice recording the audiobook. So if you like my sound of my voice, it's on Audible, and also on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, wherever you get books. And if you want to be a part of Happy Hero Education, again, visit happyhero.co to follow the whole journey, or follow us Meet Happy Heroes on Instagram, on everything else. We're posting our journeys there more in the upcoming weeks, as we kind of bring the whole audience along the whole journey of making this vast vision of reality. But the closing thoughts that I would like to leave everyone with, and I'm not just saying it because it brings us full circle, but I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. Someone needs you here. Someone needs you here. And even on the flip side, if you know someone who is struggling, if you know someone who is under distress, who can feel like they just have the whole weight of the world on their shoulders, they need you to step in. They need you to step in. And you don't have to say like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fix you, or let's go to a therapist appointment right now. You can just sit there and be like, look, I don't know what you're going through. I'm not sure what I can do to fix it. I'm not trying to fix it, but I want you to know that I'm always going to be here to listen to you. And if there are 3 words you can say to that person, tell me more. So that's my closing message. Someone needs you here. Thank you, Billy, for having me on your show. This has been great. I've been so honored and blessed, and you've poured into me, as I'm sure I've poured into you. And I hope this is not the last time. This is just the first of many.
Yep, 100%. Right? You got another 12 episodes to do.
Yeah, damn it. I'll come co-host. the show.
Right?
I'll come co-host. I will come co-host, man.
No, I appreciate that, dude. Like, you bring so much to the table. I'm so glad that we had you as a guest on here. I cannot wait to do other topics with you, because I feel just having your knowledge in the field, one as a speaker, but in the mental health advocacy area, I feel rather than us just going over each other's stories, we can bring so many tools and resources to people in a conversation. So for people listening right now, this is not the last time you're going to hear Wes or see Wes on once a week, because there's so much we can do together. There's a lot we can collaborate on. Right? And then I think that could even turn into something down the line, an event for people to go to dive deeper into this. Put that on the bulletin board. But Wes, I thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute blast. Like I said, you bring so much to the table. For people listening right now, as I said before, all of the links they said are going to be in the YouTube description. To find his book, to find the heroes, to find everything, you're going to have access to it right away. Go check it out. You're going to see it in the credits of this video anyways. It's about to roll in a couple seconds. Go look more into Wes. And if you're a teacher, if you're someone in the school system that feels that what Wes brings to the table is needed by your students, book a call with him. I'm telling you, what he brings to the table is so empowering, and it's what the youth need today. After being someone that gets to travel to schools just as much, but also being someone that's literally worked one-on-one with the population, Wes brings to the table the answers and the help they need for the moment they're in. Reach out a hand and bring that to the table. But Wes, thank you for being here, brother. For people listening right now, please like this message on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button below, and then share this message to someone who you feel needs to hear it. If at any time through Wes or myself talking, someone popped into your mind, that is a clear-cut sign that they need to hear this message just as much. Not to spread Wes, not to spread Billy, but to help someone. Reach out a hand and send it to them just as much, and hit that subscribe button as well on YouTube, because as that number goes up, that means we're helping more and more people, and that's our goal of the entire channel. And if you're in need of a coach who can help you in any areas discussed today, head to BillyGLifeCoaching.com. You can set up a free call with me, and I'll be right there for you because I want to be right there for you. But one last time, Wes, thank you for being here, brother. It's been an absolute blast.
Oh man, thank you for having me. Appreciate y'all. Be well, bro.
Awesome. Have a good one, guys.
You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it a back day. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock.